Even though the Montreal Canadiens only picked up 1 point against Tampa Bay on Sunday, Juraj Slafkovsky's effort showed us that many more points are on the Canadiens' horizon.
You are Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into another episode of Locked On Canadiens. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day and for subscribing wherever you get your podcast doing that supports us here on the show and ensures you do not miss an episode of Locked On Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. We do really love saying that here on the show. My name is Ian Boisvert, also known as @Maybe It's Ian, and I'm not joined by Laura Saba today. She is on her way back. We should have her at some point this week, but you're riding solo with me after what was a very exciting game for the Montreal Canadiens on Sunday night. It didn't look like it was going to be that way for some point in the middle of that, but Montreal battles back in the third period, grabs a point, probably should have had two, but ultimately they only grabbed the one, and the result here is not really what I want to focus on. So I want to talk about parts of that game and really what Juraj Slafkovsky is building for himself and for the Canadiens in Montreal. Secondly, we got to talk about the first line. And I think Marty is starting to understand that maybe something is broken there. So we'll talk about ways the Montreal Canadiens can fix what ails that top line. And then there was a little nugget in The Athletic regarding Jonathan Marchessault and his potential fit with the Montreal Canadiens. We'll talk about that in our third segment. Let's get started. So look, Montreal comes out of their holiday break. They play against Tampa Bay, who played against Florida the night before. So you're thinking you're getting you're rested playing against a team who's on the second half of a back-to-back with travel. I know it's from Sunrise to Tampa, but it was travel. And the Montreal Canadiens came out and dominated the first period. They were the better team in that first period. If not for Jonas Johansson, Montreal could have been up by maybe a goal or two. But generally speaking, they were doing the things that you'd want to see them do. They were forechecking really effectively. They were playing well with the puck. They were playing responsibly with the puck. I thought that, Scott Sabourin tried to get his team going by fighting Arber Xhekaj. And at the time, I didn't, as the fight was unfolding, I didn't love the fact that Xhekaj picked that moment because the Canadiens with Juraj Slafkovsky were cycling the puck in the offensive zone. But I did appreciate that, if Xhekaj is going to take that moment, he has to win that fight, and he did very decidedly. Hope Scott Sabourin is okay, who looked to be knocked out on that play. But the Canadiens, they saw that the Lightning were trying to spark something in their team, and Arber Xhekaj in that moment said, "No, you are not going to do that." So if you're going to take that moment, you have to capitalize on it. That's what Arber Xhekaj is here to do, right? So good on him for making good on that. Second period is where I don't even want to say the Canadiens got into trouble. They just didn't get any of the bounces. Ivan Demidov breaks his stick on a one-timer. It gives Tampa Bay a breakaway. In comes Nikita Kucherov, who scores on a breakaway. That was their first really good look of the night, and of course, they had nothing to do with generating it. Similarly, the next goal, also Nikita Kucherov, is only created because the Canadiens went to dump the puck in, and it hits a referee, and it bounces back the other way, and Tampa gets an odd man rush that they score on. Also Nikita Kucherov. So very frustrating that, Montreal finds themselves down 2-0, despite the fact that they had played well to that point. And maybe you could feel that Tampa did not earn those moments, but that's hockey. Sometimes you get stuff you didn't deserve. This Canadiens team, when we were watching them in like the doldrums of their tanking seasons, got plenty of goals like that, much to our dismay. Hopefully they didn't waste all of those on those bad years. But look, Montreal ends up taking a 3-0 deficit into the third period. They score one quick to start the third period. A great play from Juraj Slafkovsky. Tampa gets it back immediately afterwards, 24 seconds later. And then really it just comes down to the final 10 minutes of regulation, where the Montreal Canadiens score a bunch. Noah Dobson had one. Ultimately, the game-tying goal from Juraj Slafkovsky scored with 3.8 seconds left. Montreal dominates the overtime. Montreal gets to a shootout, which has been not a place that the Canadiens fans enjoy being as of late. It does feel like just a skills competition where it doesn't matter how the game went. You can just put whoever out there, and it doesn't. The shootout is a terrible way to decide a hockey game. As much as I hate 3-on-3, the shootout has always been a bad idea. And Tampa wins that. But ultimately, in the back of my mind, yes, Montreal grabs a point. First of all, getting a point in a game where you trailed 3-0 to start the third period, getting a point in that game is a victory in itself. So kudos to the Canadiens for making that happen. They earned it. The deserve to win meter says that they earned it. I have no issues with the way that game played out for them. But ultimately, what I come back to is that the greatest development for the Montreal Canadiens in the calendar year 2025. We like to throw that term out around a lot. When it comes to like stats, like, oh, no one has more goals than this person in the calendar year 2025. I think that's kind of lame. But using that trope for a moment, I won't even use stats. I'll just say eye testing this and just visually watching this player. Juraj Slafkovsky becoming that dude is the biggest thing to happen to the Canadiens in 2025. It wasn't always smooth. But it has been a little while now. I believe in the last 16 games, I believe he has 18 points. Juraj Slafkovsky is that dude. And what I find so fascinating about this is that from the outside, if you were just watching it and you go, okay, well, they took him off the top line and demoted him to another line. Why did he suddenly get better? And it's not that he got better, it's that he became the driver of his line. And I think Ivan Demidov's play has taken leaps and bounds as well because Juraj Slafkovsky is playing the way that he is. I think that ultimately, look, this Canadiens rebuild might not work out, right? It's most rebuilds don't. Most rebuilds are doomed to fail. It is what makes sports special is that some of them work out. This Canadiens rebuild was not going to work if Juraj Slafkovsky did not develop into the guy that we are seeing now. And there's still reasonable expectations that he can improve on the kind of player that he is already. I think he could afford to play a little more physically. I think, potentially playing with Demidov and growing that confidence and that chemistry between the two of them will only elevate both of them. This rebuild would have failed, would have automatically been doomed had Juraj Slafkovsky not developed into the kind of game breaker type player that we're seeing him become. So with that, I say that, and it's set up in a very negative way, but I say that to show that this rebuild has the juice, so to speak, that because they nailed that pick and because Slafkovsky is that dude and has shown the signs that he can continue to be that dude. And I'm so looking forward to watching him in the Olympics for this reason. But because all of that's true, this rebuild does have a shot. It's been very exciting to see him develop into that player over the last, what has it been? The last month and a half? It was kind of a slow start for him from a production standpoint. That's gone. 3-point night against Tampa Bay, including 2 goals, including the tying goal. He's become a player where every time he has the puck, you feel like something good is going to happen. And that is exceptional for the Canadiens because they have a lot of those guys now. They don't all have it all at the same time, right? Demidov is one of those players most of the time. Hudson is one of those players 95% of the time. Usually Suzuki and Caufield are those guys. I want to talk about them in the second segment here because they haven't been those guys for a little bit now, short of the game in Boston. But the fact that the Canadiens have developed another player who can be one of those guys where when the puck is on his stick, a game can change. That is a massive win for this rebuild. And again, you don't, unless you're the Edmonton Oilers of the mid 2010s, you don't get that many shots at drafting number 1 overall. You have to nail it when you get it. And at the time, we all gave the Canadiens a lot of crap for that pick. But I've said this a bunch over the last few weeks, but what they thought has come true. Where, yes, Shane Wright is going to be a great player in his own right. You can find other centers like that. Yes, Logan Cooley is going to be a good player in his own right. You can find other players like that. But what Slafkovsky brings to the table is going to be difficult, if not impossible, to find elsewhere. And to that end, and the game in Tampa showed it, and a bunch of the other games that we've seen in the past, and I imagine a lot of the games we're going to see for the rest of the season have shown that the path the Canadiens took at that draft in Montreal was the right one. So Juraj Slafkovsky, fantastic effort to I don't want to say steal a point for the Canadiens, because I think the Canadiens were the better team in that game. John Cooper would agree with that. But to take that point away from Tampa, essentially, because in a divisional fight, it's a 4-point game. You essentially made it a 1-point game, right? You only lost 1 point to Tampa in that one. So Juraj Slafkovsky, a fantastic effort, but it creates problems outside of that. One of them being the hole on the wing on the first line, and I want to talk about that in just a moment here when we come back on Locked On Canadiens. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing like being near the ice during hockey season. The speed, the hits, the atmosphere, it's unmatched. Watching at home is great, but being in the building is a completely different experience. The only thing that used to get in the way was actually getting tickets, long queues, endless screens, prices changing at checkout. That's why the Game Time app gives its advantage back to fans. It's the hack for unlocking amazing NHL tickets and experiences in just a few taps. Look, it's well documented on this show. My first trip to Montreal to see a game at the Bell Center was this season, and I, of course, went to Game Time for that experience. Look, they let me see the view from my seat right before buying, so I knew exactly what I was getting. I was able to see all of the fees included up front, so the price at the end didn't surprise me. I knew what I was getting into, and knowing that the tickets are backed by the Game Time guarantee gives real peace of mind. Laura and I here on the show, Game Time is where we go for tickets. There's nowhere else. Take the guesswork out of buying NHL tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL. That's LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. All right, we are back. Thank you for making Locked On Canadiens your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you haven't already, go check out our new Everydayer Club. You'll get access to an ad-free audio feed for Locked On Canadiens compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast app. You'll get an invite to the members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server, which includes a group chat just for listeners of the show. I am Discord literate, so come hang out with me there. Go to lockedoncanadiens.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn more. All right, there's no way to sugarcoat this. The Canadiens' first line has stunk. It has stunk for a while now. If not for Slafkovsky figuring it out with Demidov, this team might be sunk. Going into the third period against Tampa Bay, the first line of Suzuki, Bolduc, and Caufield had a 0% expected goals. 0%. That means they generated nothing. They were at 5-on-5. That line was ouch. I mean, the shot attempts were 10-1 in favor of the Tampa Bay Lightning. Yes, I know you're on the road, and the home team gets to set that matchup. I don't care. That line was not good enough. We've sort of on this show. I think Laura and I both agree on this. I've definitely been angrier about it than Laura. Zachary Bolduc is going to be a fine NHL player. He is a non-option for me on that line. The puck dies on his stick. He cannot play with those players, which is why I was, in the intermission, I was saying they have to try something. Why not put Texier on that top line? And that's what they did. They got a little better. They generated a little bit in the third, but ultimately it was too little too late for that line. In a game where, Tampa gets two glorious bounces that end up in the Canadiens' net, and you lose in the shootout, I feel that line should have contributed more. It could have contributed more and needed to contribute more. You get a goal from that line, Montreal wins that game, right? That's not complicated to say. It's not an over exaggeration. It's the reality. And in moments like that, you need to be able to count on that top line for a goal. They can't right now. So I don't know. Short term, I think I would just keep Texier there. Longer term, though, Kirby Dach's coming back soon. And I think that this is an opportunity for Kirby Dach. Now, a lot of people will say, well, he's coming back from injury. Do you really want to throw all that on him right away? Kirby Dach is a restricted free agent at the end of the year. Kirby Dach has not been able to carve out a role for himself on this team. And the best Kirby Dach ever looked in a Montreal Canadiens uniform was on the wing with Cole Caufield and Nick Suzuki. If this is not a good time for Kirby Dach to become that guy, there never will be a good time for it to happen. This is an opportunity for him. And it's an opportunity, I might add, that is created not because a player has faltered, but because a player has succeeded. Because Juraj Slafkovsky has dominated to such an extent that the Canadiens need to be able to use him to drive his own line. It creates an opportunity on the first line with Suzuki and Caufield to have a winger who can play that kind of style. Now, I get why they try Bolduc in that spot, right? Bigger body. You know, there were some. Bolduc said that his season kind of turned around last year in St. Louis when he started to forecheck more. I'm not seeing it at all in his game. I'm really trying to find a player comp for Bolduc, and I'm really having a hard time because he's right now a less physical Josh Anderson, and you know who's a more physical Josh Anderson? Josh Anderson. And as much as like we've kind of sworn off the idea of Marty putting Anderson back on that top line, he seems like a better option than what Bolduc had been providing for the Canadiens. I think Bolduc developing on the first line is the worst case scenario for that player. So looking at this, I really think that the plan is to keep Slafkovsky cooking with Demidov and Kapanen, and they're waiting for someone to get healthy. And right now, that next body up, that next guy up, looks like it's going to be Kirby Dach. He was skating. He's been skating and practicing. You know, Marty said before the holiday break that it was unlikely he would play before the Christmas holiday. We're now past that, so I'm sure we'll be hearing more about when he's on the way back. But ultimately, you know, this is an opportunity for Kirby Dach. As a player, and in life in general, you don't get to choose when these opportunities happen, right? I mean, ideally, in Kirby Dach's mind or in any player's mind, that opportunity comes when you're playing your best and you can sort of hit the ground running in that spot. That's not how the real world works, though. So it's on Kirby Dach at this point. You know, if he comes back and and they put him in that role immediately, to take hold of it. Now, all of this said, I want to end this segment by saying this. Suzuki and Caufield are not without blame for the way that they have played. The Boston game, they picked up their cookies at the end on the power plays. Yes, the Bolduc goal was at 5-on-5, but it was really just a one-off play. Suzuki driving the net, the rebound pops out to Bolduc, he's able to bury it. The rest are power play goals. It's not really success of that line. It's success of that power play unit. They have to play better. And I'm wondering how much of the Olympic situation is weighing on Suzuki. And I'm kind of hoping, I think Team Canada is going to announce their roster either New Year's Eve or New Year's Day. I'm really hoping that whatever that announcement is, whether Suzuki makes Team Canada or not, then maybe it snaps him out of whatever he's going through, because he has not played particularly well over the last few games. And I know there's this habit with Canadiens fans to go, oh, well, he must be playing through some kind of injury, or he just doesn't have it right now, which is just likely and far less severe. Caufield had the goal against Boston, but before that, he had gone 6 without scoring. That those two are just as much in control of how they play as their line mate is, as whoever that third option is on that line. So I do think that the Canadiens need to find a better option for those two, and I hope it's Kirby Dach when he's ready to come back. But they have to help themselves, man. And I didn't see much in that Tampa game that made me think they could help themselves right now. I hoped that Boston would have been that game where they could have found themselves and come back. But ultimately, I sense a lot of frustration there. Nick Suzuki, even after the Boston game, was frustrated with how that line played through 40 minutes and at 5-on-5. So it's not a secret that they're not playing well. It's what remains to be seen is who solves it, because I don't think right now Slafkovsky is going back to that line, because if they wanted to do that, they would have done it by now. But they like Slafkovsky with Demidov. I kind of like the long-term outlook there. You find it, maybe Kapanen develops into that second line center, or maybe you find another one, and that's a line. That's a combo, Slafkovsky and Demidov. Slafkovsky, Marty talks about his duos. If Suzuki and Caufield are a duo, there's no room for Slafkovsky there. Slafkovsky has developed his own duo with Ivan Demidov. So you need to find a guy who can slot into both of those duos. That's what's on sort of Marty's plate right now, to see if that option is internal. And if it's not, it's on the front office to go find somebody. And hey, speaking of that, there's some rumors that a guy in Nashville who's from Montreal might be willing to join the Canadiens at some point. And we'll get into that in just a minute here on Locked On Canadiens. All right, welcome back to Locked On Canadiens. This is sort of a rumor roundup. I'm not putting the hat on, and I actually don't know how much of this is a rumor based on how it's written. But in The Athletic, Pierre LeBrun and Chris Johnston have their NHL Trade Maker article where they are predicting where top targets go by the deadline. That is a direct quote. In part two, the first topic was Jonathan Marchessault, 34-year-old winger, shoots right, UFA in 3 years, $5.5 million cap hit, current trade board ranking number 23. While Pierre LeBrun picks the Toronto Maple Leafs as the team to make that move for him, which I think is odd considering where the direction the Maple Leafs are going in. Chris Johnston picks the Montreal Canadiens, and saying that essentially, he would welcome a move to Montreal. He would have to waive his no trade clause in order to go, and there probably wouldn't be much of a concern there, especially when you consider that when he was negotiating this contract as a free agent, Montreal was right there with him. They were going to offer him more money annually, but with one shorter year, which he declined because he wanted that long-term security. He wanted that extra added year, which is why I find it so funny that the Canadiens would be interested in this player now, because ultimately not that much has changed since Marchessault signed this contract with the Nashville Predators. But I guess maybe the Canadiens' outlook has changed, and maybe I think they're seeing that the need for a veteran presences throughout their lineup is important. They're a very young team. I think that's, going back to why they acquired Phil Danault, who I thought was excellent against Tampa. The Nick Paul goal, he kind of gets lost, and Nick Paul, gets the inside track on him. But generally speaking, possession-wise, his line was very good. Face-off wise, Phil Danault came as advertised. Especially, they sent him out there just like we used to see a ton of back when he was in Montreal, when Claude Julien was coaching him, where 3-on-3 overtime starts and Phil Danault's out there to take the opening draw. And look, he did that and won it. The Canadiens had the puck for a very long time in that overtime. But I think maybe that's what's happening here, that the Canadiens are trying to find more veteran options. The challenge to me is that it's not even so much the cap hit long term. It's just making this fit now. Chris Johnston states that, this is a direct quote from him, facilitating a trade for Marchessault would necessitate some money going out the door, with Patrick Laine's $8.7 million cap hit the most obvious candidate to go. That would, just speaking for me personally, who folks know that's my guy, and Patrick Laine, that would stink. I wouldn't want to see that. Is it possible that then, if Montreal, why would Nashville do that? Well, they get out from behind Marchessault's contract through 2029, and instead they only have Laine on the books until the end of the year. And maybe if you do this, before the trade deadline happens, you can retain half of Laine's contract and flip him. The retention There's the double retention deadline now. If Montreal just trades the whole cap hit to Nashville, they can retain on it, and deal him again to an actual competitor who maybe wants Patrick Laine but doesn't want him at the full 8.7, and they want him as a power play specialist, and they want him, to contribute in the playoffs. I think that's a reasonable expectation for that. I think the challenge becomes the age curve for Jonathan Marchessault. Like I said, he is 34 years old. I with Nashville being the way they are, I'm not so much scared off by Marchessault's 7 goals and 3 assists for 10 points in 28 games. Because I think that in a very similar way, this feels like Alex Carrier all over again, in that who expected Alex Carrier to be any good? Because he was playing in Nashville and he was being, buried there as a defensive defenseman who that team just stunk, and that team still stinks. It's not a good hockey team. I wonder how much of that's happening. The Canadiens have shown that they're willing to take shots on players like that. Carrier being one, Phil Deneau being another one, just a few weeks ago now. Not even 2 weeks ago yet. That being another one, in that he has not had a great season with he had not had a great season with the LA Kings. He's still looking for his first goal. He has not scored yet this year. But Montreal saw a player there who could help them now and next year when he's still under contract. The problem with Marchessault that I see is I wonder if he can sort of Brendan Gallagher himself towards the end of this contract. Gallagher has shifted his role pretty effectively to that of a fourth line player. Can Marchessault do that in 2 years? That becomes the real question for me. I don't think he forgot how to score. I think, again, Nashville really stinks. Some team is going to get Jonathan Marchessault and realize he's actually still a good hockey player. I think that a lot of that sort of stuff is overblown, where people just look at the stat line and they go, see, he's washed. He might be, but I find it far more likely that the team has just really stunk. What's more likely? That, Marchessault, Stamkos, Forsberg, Yossi, all those guys are just bad at hockey now, or the rest of whatever that team is cooking is rotten. Like I believe the latter to be true. With that said, the price of acquisition is going to be important here. I'd hope the Canadiens wouldn't need to spend a first round pick on a guy like that, especially one like Marchessault, where he has a no trade clause. He kind of controls his own destiny here. Nashville would be just trying to get out from underneath the cap hit for, the rest of that contract and trying to start over. But ultimately, that's a player that if you're acquiring him, it's as a second line winger, maybe a first line winger in a pinch. Could he, right? If the Canadiens get Dach back and they realize, oh crap, this Dach thing isn't working out, could Marchessault jump onto that line? That line becomes very small all of a sudden, going from, Slafkovsky to Bolduc to Dach to potentially Marchessault. So it'll be interesting to see. I don't think the Canadiens do this if it mortgages their future in any meaningful way. I think they do this if it's a similar deal to what they got for Phil Deneau. That said, I don't know if that deal is available. I don't know that the Predators are going to be looking to do that sort of thing. Now, they could just be bad at this. Nashville traded, Carrier to Montreal for Justin Barron straight up, a deal they handedly have lost. They have not won that trade. They traded a young defenseman for a pick in, whatever Edmonton was cooking up a couple weeks ago with their goaltending swaps, and they added a defenseman. I think there's a very good chance that Barry Trotz might just not be good at being a general manager. And if that's the case, Kent Hughes should call him every day. Every general manager, if they are not doing that, if they are not calling Barry Trotz every day, they are not doing their job. So I think there's a chance Montreal is able to get him at a reduced cost. It's not a player that is going to cost them an arm and a leg, but that's really the only way that I feel comfortable doing this, especially considering, 34, the age curve happening, and can he transition his game to being an energy line or fourth line player in the future? That all remains to be seen. All right, let's leave that there. I want to thank you guys for tuning in to Locked On Canadiens today. Make sure you subscribe and follow Locked On Canadiens everywhere so you get all the latest episodes. You can find me at Maybe It's Ian. You can find Laura at The Ecto Stick. You can find us, Locked On Canadiens, everywhere we're posting things, Blue Sky, Instagram, and TikTok at Locked On Canadiens. You can email us, lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. We do a mailbag every week, so send in those questions. And we like to spend our Friday episodes going through all of those. If you're still looking for holiday gifts for some reason, or someone keeps asking you what you want for some reason, make it easy. Ask for the Everyday Club, ad-free episodes of this show, exclusive Discord server access, and more. Subscriptions can be gifted through lockedoncanadiens.supercast.com. For those of you on video, we send you to the first ever 24/7 National Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. On audio, make sure you make your second listen NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL. Thanks again for tuning in. We will be back tomorrow, hopefully with Laura, but if not, I will see you guys back here tomorrow. Thanks for listening.